Earlier on, Geo messaged me and he said, "You're never going to guess what David Moyes is up to." I said, "He's not been delivering vegetables again, has he, Geo?" He said, "No." I said, "He's not taken Mrs. Moyes on a romantic trip to Sevilla, thus scouting out the hotels for the final and trying to pass it off as a romantic Moisey type excursion away." He said, "No." What has he been doing, Gio?
He was at the Millwall game. I don't think he was there to watch Millwall, though. He was at the Millwall Hall game. I think he was there for more players in the latter team. But what I find it interesting, we'll get into the players in a second, because sometimes when Moyes discusses transfers, you get some truths from him. They happily discuss, usually once it's happened, you discuss bids that have gone in or so on and so forth. But he sometimes does speak honestly and sort of deliver truths. And I think, obviously, today being at that game is one of those truths, which is probably, it's all but, to me anyway, it's all but confirmed we are certainly interested in at least one Hull player, and interested enough that Moyes will have been given enough stuff from his scouting team or Rob Newman or someone that Moyes thinks this is worth investigating more, because Moyes has only got so much time, with all the games that we've got going on a minute in training and stuff. There's only so many games. I think you could probably count them on one hand how many games Moyes can get to in a month. So for him to pick this one, I'm aware it's in London, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's had this one marked for a long, long time. Hull being away to Millwall on Easter Monday, he's thought, that's the game I'm going to go to. But he's obviously heard enough from his trusted people around the club that one of these boys is a potential transfer target for West Ham.
One of these boys, more than one boy.
There could be. I think we can all guess who it is. I don't think we'd be far away, but there's probably one. There's also one or two others, and I often, while I speak about Moyes' truth guns, I often get suspicious with David Moyes. Whenever he says a player's injured, I think, is he really? Whenever Moyes would say he's available, I think, is he really? So when Moyes has gone there, and everybody will talk about the main man, I do wonder maybe there's someone else on his radar, because if we're going to assume Moyes is there for one player in particular, the football community is as well. So any club watching this player will think, "Ooh, West Ham just showing their hand here a little bit." So I do wonder maybe Moyes was there to actually have a look over somebody else perhaps as well. I don't know. I'm just guessing here. But Moyes is a sneaky bugger sometimes.
He is that. He is a nice man. He is a charitable man who delivers vegetables in his spare time, but he is also a sneaky bugger who can't be trusted. Okay, so the guy you're talking about is Lewis Potter, right?
Yes.
Okay, now he's a winger. Is he a left winger or a right winger, do we know?
Left winger, but right-footed.
So the opposite of Jarrod Bowen, who was also from Hull.
Yes.
A right winger, but left-footed.
Yeah, slightly different player, but there's definitely, obviously, some obvious comparisons to be made there. But a left winger, this is what you've been wanting. You've been wanting a left winger. He is a left winger. He's obviously played in other different positions as well for Hull, and almost the other positions he has played in will appeal to David Moyes as well, actually. But his best position is left wing.
Okay.
No, not that one. We've got enough of them. We've got 3 of them on the bench some days, so we don't need that. But wing back and striker, he's covered both of those positions and played reasonably well in those ones. But certainly his best position is the left of a front 3.
Okay, have you seen him play?
A bit, yeah, a bit, because we've been linked to him quite a lot, and I don't mind watching Championship football. Actually, I've been watching a bit of it today. On Easter Monday, I've watched a bit, not Hull, unfortunately, but yeah, I don't mind watching Championship football. So I've seen a bit of him.
Is he fast?
Yes.
Oh, now you're talking my language. He's a left winger and he's fast. Wow. Oh, this is really, really good. Next, you'll be telling me his name is Dembele. It's not.
No, his name's Keane. But so sorry about that.
It's Keane Lewis Potter.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I guess we could chuck another name in there. But he wasn't the only one that was there, right?
No, we've also got
obviously there were some other players.
There's plenty of other players, but the ones to take note of: Jacob Greaves is the Hull centre back. Now I don't know loads about him. 20 years old, and he's sort of held in high regard. And I think there's an expectation that he will be playing Premier League football, possibly even next season. And it's a bit like the Joe Rodon thing, which is a case of who's going to move first. Someone's going to go get him. And Tottenham are the one that's linked to him a lot. Now, it's worth noting that also at the game today was one of Tottenham's chief scouts and what's his name? David Pleat. David Pleat, the Tottenham scout. He was at the game as well. So was Thomas Frank, but I think Thomas Frank was watching one of the Millwall players. But Brentford have been linked to Lewis Potter in the past as well. And I think it feels like there's a bit of a bidding war, a way to start heating up for Lewis Potter, actually. He's going to have 2 years left on his contract at Hull. He's got a year left, but Hull have got that option to trigger it for a further year. The chairman is quite outspoken about potentially selling him in the summer as well. So it feels inevitable that he will be a Premier League player next season. It feels likely that Greaves may be a Premier League player next season as well. So there was certainly him that Moyes could have been looking at if he wants a young centre-back from the Championship.
Does it? I mean, I'm quite pleased to hear he's scouting this, because I think if there's any way that we can speed up what we all consider to be the dither, then him personally going to look at one, there can't be any excuses after that. I guess he goes and sees the game. How many times does he want to see them? I guess that's the only thing you could add on to that. But if once he's got all the scouting reports in, once he's had the recommendation, he needs to go and rubber stamp it. He needs to go and watch them. I think that's a good thing. So I like that from that aspect. I also, in terms of, a bidding war, what could possibly go wrong with West Ham once David Moyes said, I want this player, he hands it over to the board and then go on, guys, go and do your stuff. But I do think if the board can get the bid right, then you would hope that the path that's already been trodden by Jarrod Bowen, and that clearly we will have a relationship of some kind with them in terms of paying them money, because we don't structure deals apart from the Sebastian Haller one where we pay all the money up front. We do tend to pay in 5 installments. So clearly, Hull City all know West Ham are good for the money because we've been paying them every year for the last 2 or 3 years. So I think that definitely helps us. How do you, before I say what I want to say about the further targets, how do you feel about this? Are you pleased about that?
Yeah, I am. I do think it's Moyes showing his hand. I think these days, especially when a manager goes to game, it's getting rarer and rarer to some extent because of software available to them now, like Wise Scout. You don't need to go to the game to watch the game anymore. Moyes can go back and watch the last 10 Hull City games back to back in his office if he wants to at the click of a few buttons. So back when Moyes started out as a manager, he would have had to attend games in order to see a player. And I think it's moved on a little bit. And when you hear Moyes speaking, I know I keep going back to that podcast he did with Jake Humphries and that. Even Moyes is in there speaking about how he's had to retrain himself as a manager in various aspects. This is one of the aspects he will have had to sort of say, I've got to stop doing this. I've got to stop demanding to see a player live for 10 games. I can't do it anymore because I've got the software at my fingertips, so does everybody else. And there'll be managers out there that don't need to go and see players, that are willing to trust what they see on the screen. So I think Moyes going, it feels almost like the last hurdle to me, Gonzo. It feels like once Moyes has gone and seen him, and if he's happy, that's almost like the rubber stamp saying, right, now this is a confirmed target. We know Moyes likes his whiteboard thing. It's almost like take Lewis Potter off there and move him onto the other whiteboard. He's been upgraded, essentially. So I think this is a real almost statement of intent to some extent. Now, Moyes obviously may not have liked what he saw and thought, I'm not sure about him. He did it with James Maddison when Maddison was up Norwich. We know Moyes went to watch Maddison and decided he wasn't for him. So, but the point is he still went there. And as we got told a few years ago, Moyes went to see him at Norwich and decided Maddison wasn't for him. Moyes made his decision, backed off the back of seeing him live. Moyes made his decision not to go for James Maddison. Today, I've got a feeling Moyes may not have made his final decision, but I think he would have had a real inkling as to which way to go leaving that stadium today, about whether to pursue Lewis Potter further or we'll leave it for now. Thank you.
I'd love to know what Maddison did wrong.
Do you know what? Do you know the thing though? They played Chelsea in the cup. It was
right. He didn't dominate the game. Yeah.
No, but do you know something? I think I get why Moyes would have went to that game, which is let's see if you can do it against a penalty. You can rip it up in the Championship. Let's see if you can do it in a penalty. No, you can't. Okay, fine. He got it wrong. But
yeah, you couldn't outdo Rudiger and Kante 3 years ago. Yeah, that's it. You're done. I do wonder what he did. This just keen to explore this MOT test, and you alluded to the podcast, which was an excellent podcast, and I'm sure I speak for everyone. Thank you for the tip off on that. It was brilliant. He confirmed a lot of things which we suspected, and the non-negotiables, the attitude, the desire, everything he spoke about the work rate and all of those things. I often wonder with that, how do you test that out with players? And I'll give you an example. How does he know? Because I think there's a good answer to this one here. But let's say if we know that Yosif En-Nesyri, all right, how does he know that that was a big target for him? How does he know that he's got that stuff? How does he know that he's got the determination? I mean, I guess someone might say might still have a contact out in Spain. Lingard you would know that because he worked with Lingard. Lingard was coming through when he was at Manchester United. I think in this one, how's he going to pass the Moyes MOT? Well, there's a very easy way, which is basically just to say to Bowen, okay, look, you still know lots of people at Hull. What's this guy like? You know, speak to the assistant manager, speak to the other players there. And it's easy. I don't know who the captain of Hull is and all the rest of it, but it's easy for Bowen to phone them up and say, look, what's Lewis Potter like? And that's in case, I don't know how long he's been there. He might have been there a couple of years ago, and then it comes back, oh, he's a really hard trainer. He's a good guy. He loves his mum. He's nice to cats, that sort of thing. And then he just finds out all this stuff about him.
Yeah, I get. I think that is the one way of doing it. I think that you could, if you really did your research into Hull and Moyes and stuff, I think you could probably find other tangents as well. Lewis Potter was at Hull when Bowen was, but I think Lewis Potter was practically Bowen's replacement. Just that Gosicki left at the same time, so I think he was Gosicki's replacement on the other side of the pitch, and he sort of got blooded in the Championship from January onwards, because then he sort of became a mainstay in the team in League One when they won the title the season after Jarrod Bowen had left. But they've also, like, not long ago sacked their manager, and Grant McCann, who's now manager of Peterborough United. Who does our owners know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but also...
Can you ask Grant? Can you ask Grant about when they play? Grant's got no loyalty now to Hull City, or I know he's a former player and stuff. He probably does have some of it. But my point is, you can now talk to his former manager. The current manager of Hull City is a former Rangers player. I wouldn't be surprised if Moyes has got an indirect link to him as well through the Scottish links and stuff. So there's probably, if you do a deep dive into it, there's probably lots of links you could work out between Moyes and Hull if you wanted to. But yeah, Bowen would be there. Jarrod, what do you reckon?
Sure, yeah. Final question. I know, and unless there's anything else you want to say, because I know you were keen to discuss this, but I think I probably know your answer here. Are you at all worried by this sort of thing, bearing in mind where he's come from and bearing in mind that we've not seen Occo Flex, who came from Celtic? He would have known a lot about Occo Flex. The lad Alves, who come from Silkeborg and then was then loaned out to Sunderland, and then does that worry you at all, or do you think this is more Bowen?
I think this is more Bowen. I think the difference is Bowen had sort of played a little bit in the Premier League before Hull got relegated, obviously. But I think we almost need one or two players like that in our squad. I think we need one or two 20, 21, 22-year-olds that are good enough for the first team, but almost don't have the authority to demand a first-team place just like that, if you know what I mean. I think to get in young, hungry players, I think is something that we probably need a little bit more of at the minute, because if you get in a 28-year-old that's established, you always have to give them first team minutes from the off a little bit. But with someone like Lewis Potter, you can say your time will come. You're going to start off on the bench, but you will get opportunities. And when you get one, grab it and you'll stay in the team kind of thing. I actually think this is the exact type of profile that we need to be going for. And I'm probably more encouraged about the prospect of Moyes identifying, deciding on a target in the middle of April. You know, if we won't buy him, regardless of if we want him or not, we won't sign him until middle of June at the earliest. So it's 2 months away from things getting serious. But it's encouraging times, actually. And I think Lewis Potter is a good player. I prefer Brennan Johnson at Nottingham Forest, being honest. But I think Lewis Potter, damn good player, a right-footed player on the left wing. I can see what he's trying to do. I think it's definitely a position that we could do within the squad as well. So it's all encouraging signs. And just quickly, we have been linked to a Hull player this morning, actually, before Moyes was known to be at the game. And Deshaun Bernard, never heard of him. He's on loan from Man United to Hull City.
United, yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard of him. So I'm hoping you know something about him, because...
Well, no, I don't. I mean, but apparently he is... Actually, I say no. Apparently he's quite versatile. He can play in numerous positions across the back line. And he's done very well, apparently. But I believe he's got a really long contract, as I understand it. 2025, 2026, something like that. I can imagine Manchester United. It's going to be interesting. No one knows what's going to happen. I'd imagine they might have a bit of the ump really with possibly West Ham. So we've tried to do business with them, and particularly if we get Jesse Lingard on a free, you can only imagine it might be a bit grumpy. And then if we try and get Rashford as well, I'm not saying we will, but if we turn around and said, hold on a second, that lad there, we're not paying you your 50 million for him or whatever. He's got 12 months left on his contract. We'll have him like Jesse if you're not careful. You can imagine it getting to a point where Man United don't want to do us any favours with the youngsters. But then again, sometimes youngsters do ask to leave. And what's his name? Odebeko was
scored again.
Did he?
Yeah, 2-2 now.
Really?
Yeah, he scored again for Doncaster today. So 2 goals, two goals in his last 2 games for Doncaster now. So slightly promising news. I don't expect a future for him at West Ham, but at least he's scoring goals and probably making himself appealing to Championship clubs next season. Should he go on loan or should we sell him? So
yeah, well now you've heard the obviously that Moyes did the double sub with him, and it was against Man United, wasn't it? And then when you listen to David Moyes in that podcast, and he didn't look like he was that bothered, really, did he? The player when he came on, you listen to Moyes in that podcast, you think back to that performance, you think, oh mate, that you weren't ticking the old David Moyes boxes there. That's for sure. Yeah. Anything else you need to say about it, mate?
No, that's all. That's all, really. Just very interesting that Moyes is at the game. I think it confirms interest. At the very minimum, I think it confirms that we are thoroughly scouting at least one player involved today. And it's likely to be Keane Lewis-Potter, possibly Greaves, unless there's a curveball in there. But I think we'd have heard it by now. So, Keane Lewis-Potter might be one of our main targets in the summer if 2 and 2 equals 4. So, interesting times.
Lovely, mate. Listen, thank you very much indeed. We've learned that David Moyes has got he scouted someone. One of those 3 might be a curveball, might be someone a little bit left of field, or it just might be the left winger who plays left of field. That's for sure. We do know one thing: he took it seriously because obviously Mrs. Moyes, when she woke up in the morning, and she probably said, "Darling, what are we doing today? It's Easter Monday. I've got a nice table booked at the restaurant. I've not seen you much this weekend. We thought we'd go out for a walk. We'd walk the dogs, go out for a nice meal. Is everything all right?" And he probably went, "Ah."
I'm taking you. I've already booked one, love, at a lovely restaurant called the New Den.
Absolutely. There you go. And that is one restaurant I won't be frequenting. Thanks for tuning in.